Okay, I think that's it. So wonderful to see such a lovely turnout. Thank you all for taking time out of your busy mornings to come and join us for our last college-related College and Coffee. I'll be working with the school therapist to hopefully provide one more of these mornings around more of a mental health issue. But in terms of the college, this is the last one of the year, so I'm glad you could join us. We have our counseling staff with us. Mrs. Cuneo, Mr. Fuller, and Brother Tom Fahey will be leading our discussion today. We are also exemplifying the one school model today, so Mrs. Calgill, Mr. Borchard, and Ms. Savolas will probably be stepping out early because they're headed to the middle school for a getting ready for college rally that they're going to lead. Today we are talking about, and also please, if you came in the back door, don't be shy to go get coffee and treats. We have plenty, and we want you to have your fill. Today we're going to be talking primarily to 9th, 10th, and 11th grade parents on where your student should be in the college application process, academically, what do they do in the summer, things like that, depending on grade level. So really we just like to give you this little idea on where your student should be, because we know that sometimes you feel like you're not sure where they should be, and that can produce some anxiety. A quick plug, how many junior parents are in here? Awesome. So we have been providing this semester for juniors, one-day junior college tours. And I went on the UCLA Occidental tour. And what's nice about these tours, and what I want to help you understand, so maybe you could help your students understand, is that we usually try to do a private and a public school on the same day, maybe a bigger school and a smaller school. So even if those schools aren't necessarily going to end up on their list, they start to get a feel for what kind of campus feel they like. So the last one is Monday, this coming Monday. So we really need to know who's coming by Thursday to see if the trip will actually be able to go or not. Right now we have a low number. It is Cal Lutheran and Channel Islands. And again, public, private, in our backyard. So if you junior parents are interested in encouraging your children to go on that trip on Monday, it's very worthwhile. I listened to the conversations coming back from the UCLA Occidental tour on last week, and we tell them as counselors that that's what we want them paying attention to. You know, yes, do you like this school, but also what do you think about the size? What do you think about, what do you hear this school being able to provide as a public school or a bigger school versus this school where the classes are really small in a private school? And I heard the conversation coming back, and they really were discussing those kinds of things. So it's a valuable experience for juniors. And we would really like this trip to be able to go on Monday. So that being said, how many are 9th grade parents, just out of curiosity? Wow, good, thank you, welcome. 10th grade? Okay, we have a great mix. 12th? 12th, okay. Thank you. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to the other counselors. Thank you again for being here. Oh, welcome, come in.
Thank you. All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Mrs. Cuneo, for those of you who might not know me. And glad to see you all here today. As Mrs. Gallant said, we're going to be talking to you a little bit about what stage your child should be in right now, and what you should expect in terms of conversations at home, advice or support that you can follow up on at home. As you all should know, we see our students regularly. We see them at least once a semester, and beyond that, they're always welcome to come see us. So they can sign up on our doors, they can send us an email with a request for an appointment or just a quick question, or just pop in at our office at break or at lunch. So please continue to encourage your students to do that. We're a great resource in our office, and we love to see them and get to know them and help them, especially with this model that we have them all 4 years. So your help at home is always appreciated. The biggest question that we get every time we see students is, what should I be doing now? Or am I behind? Or from parents, are we behind? What should we be doing? So again, that's one of our motivations for having this kind of a topic today. So to start things off, just want to let you know what we're doing right now in the office. Right now it's February, and we are knee-deep in the second semester checking in with students. So hopefully some of you have heard that we've been calling your students in. We are going to be talking to them primarily about where they are in the semester, in terms of classes, grades from the fall semester. Were they happy? Do they need help in a class? Where are they with things? How are they doing with their activities? All of those good things. Friends, life at home, everything good, those kinds of things. But also looking forward to next year. Sometimes they give us a glazed look when we say, have you thought about classes for next year? Because they're worried about already classes this year. But we are starting to have that conversation with them. So counselors are going to be going into classrooms starting next month to go over the classes that they're going to be needing to take for the following year. And when we meet with them in our office right now, we're going over with them the 4-year plan. So many times we will send that home with them so you guys can check that out, or they'll just say, oh yes, I talked to my counselor about it. We go over what they've taken so far, what they are planning to take next year, maybe based on what math they're in. If they want to move on to honors or AP classes, we go over what those prerequisites are, what options they have. The older they get, the more options they have. So for 9th and 10th graders, they don't have too many options because they're just working on their subject requirements. But for juniors and seniors, they start to have a lot more options, which is exciting. So just a little plug for our course description guide. When course selections do begin, they have a long time to fill these out. So it's not a real panic. Usually they're not due until after spring break, which will be in April. But what you guys can do at home and remind your students about is that we have a course description guide online on the Chaminade homepage, and it's under academics. So when we talk to your students, we go into classes, we say, look up the classes. Read the little course descriptions, because when they do have electives, they get a little overwhelmed. And so we try to describe to them what their options are, but really it comes down to them. There's really no wrong answer. So we want them to read the course guide, talk about it with you, figure out what they want to take, and then we can go from there. Okay? Also what we do when we meet with students is we check their graduation requirements. You can also review these on Net Classroom. Has anyone found the little pie chart on Net Classroom where you can look at those? Yes, some of you? Okay. So if you haven't, feel free to do that on Net Classroom. It's available, and we talk about that with your student as well to make sure that they're working on their PE requirements. Either they have 2 seasons of being an athlete here at Chaminade on the roster, or they're taking 2 semester PE classes to fulfill that requirement, and then all the other requirements as well. If you have any questions about it, obviously check that pie chart or send your counselor an email, and we'll be happy to confirm anything for you. So some of the things that we talk about with students, 9th and 10th graders in particular, is what's coming ahead in terms of the college search process. Obviously, we're a college prep school, so we always have college on our mind, and I'm sure you guys do as well. And we always tell students, the time goes by really quickly. It doesn't seem like it sometimes when you're in 9th grade, the kids are not thinking about college, but we always tell them, it's out there. So when you're choosing courses, you want to have that in mind. When you're looking at your GPA or having to make up classes, whatever it might be, you want to have that in mind. But essentially, we want 9th and 10th graders to just focus on their GPA. We want them to be involved in something that they're excited about and, focus on their grades more than anything. For 9th graders, we tell them, it's way too early to start doing any test prep, okay? We understand that there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of conversation outside of Chaminade about testing, and the testing agencies certainly fuel that fire a little bit. But our philosophy in our office is to just focus on grades, not worry about test prep at this time. Okay, even for 10th graders, we tell them wait until junior year. Okay, in 9th graders, they will be taking ninth graders take the ACT and the PSAT in the fall, so they get kind of some exposure to it, but we don't want them to go overboard. Okay, sophomores in 10th grade. They can take subject tests in June if they're taking AP classes. Sophomore year is the first time that they are able to take AP classes. So a lot of times kids will take AP World History. So they're studying for that exam, which happens in May anyway. So a lot of times we will have a conversation with that student about, well, if you want to get exposed to a subject test for the first time through College Board, go ahead and take it because you're already studying for the AP exam. So if you have a student in that boat, you may want to follow up with them on that, or have them talk to us about it. It's a good opportunity to get their feet wet in that kind of a subject test. Subject tests are 1 hour long, and they're only on one subject. So many times when students are in APs, we will suggest that they take a subject test. Sometimes they're required for college applications. Typically they're not, but for some schools they are, so we give that caveat to them. But a lot of times if they are strong in a particular subject, we say it's a good thing to take so that you can show colleges that you have that expertise in that subject area. So 10th grade is just a good time to get that practice. For eager 10th graders, for test prep, they can use Shmoop. Anyone heard of Shmoop in here? Okay, so Shmoop is a online comprehensive test prep for ACT and the new SAT that Chaminade has already purchased. So all your student has to do is use the login information and log in, and voila, they can do test prep in their pajamas on their couch. Okay, anytime they want. So again, this is something that 10th graders might want to look at, but we don't advise like jumping into that or taking a formal class or anything like that. We just say focus on grades and all of that, and then in 11th grade we talk to them about setting up a schedule. Okay. So juniors, for all you junior parents, juniors have taken the PSAT in the fall and gotten those results back electronically. If there's any issues with that, they can come see us for that information. And juniors, we want them to, as I said, we talk about test prep in the junior year. So in the fall, you guys went to a college kickoff night, or for you 10th graders, you have that to look forward to. In the fall of junior year, we invite parents and students to a big night called College Kickoff, and we talk about how the process works here, what to expect, testing, all the things are going to be happening when we kind of kick the college process into first year here. And so testing is obviously a big part of that. We talk about starting maybe at the end of fall semester, first part of spring semester to start prepping. And we advise prepping 8 to 10 weeks before an exam. And we say that by June of your junior year, you should take 1 ACT and 1 SAT. Okay, and the logic behind that is, again, you want to focus on your grades up until then. And those tests are very curriculum-based. Even the new SAT is a lot more curriculum-based. So in our minds, not only does that allow students to get through, their grades and be focusing on all of that here, which is primary what colleges want to look at. They care a lot more about grades over time than a test on a Saturday. But it also allows students to have another full year of math, full year of English, reading, literature, all of that, which will only help them on the exams. So for juniors in the spring, we want them to have a plan to take the ACT and the SAT. All right, and here is where Brother Tom is going to take over.
Thank you. Tours is my cup of tea, so to speak. I like travel. I hope you like travel too. About 30 years ago, I was principal of another school, and we were playing a game here at Chaminade, so I came on campus. I drove on by the gate down here and saw the green lawns, the redwood trees, the flowers, the Bob Hope building. I like this place. I really like this place. And I remember making a mental note. Someday, if I ever get the chance, it would be really a nice place to work. And sure enough, as time passed, I had the opportunity. And I tell that only to say, getting your feet on the ground somewhere, on a campus, might be exactly what one needs, especially at an early stage like sophomore or junior year, to make the right choice. We sometimes do it in reverse. Students apply to maybe 15 schools, but have visited maybe one. And then they wait till the acceptances come and they visit and try to choose which is it that they like most. Might be a better approach to visit some, get a sense of them. And who knows, one of those campuses might be exactly what Chaminade was for me, a place where I felt I could make myself at home here. I really like this place. So at any rate, seeing the campus for yourself obviously is amazing, but also taking advantage of all the opportunities that you have as you travel. And when we talk about that, like family vacations, who knows where you're going? Some of you are going to Arizona, some of you are going back east, some of you are going to the Midwest. Maybe some of you are going international. We have more and more kids applying internationally all the time, especially if we include Canada as international. But also students going with groups, whether it's for competitions or whatnot. There are downtimes where students are able to visit colleges, and some programs do a great job. For example, robotics, if they're in the Midwest, they might take the kids to Purdue and places like that. to get a real life hands-on experience. So to take advantage, every advantage that you can when you're traveling, when your student is traveling, reminding them to set foot on colleges, on college campuses, that is. Also, we offer a lot of tours through Chaminade, and they're in the fall and spring each year. We rotate the cycle of tours so that we're not constantly repeating. And just so you see, the cycle for the immediate present is this spring, in fact, March 7th, which is probably a week from Monday or something like that, at 6 a.m. in the morning. We're leaving Chaminade by bus, heading for San Luis Obispo, first stop. And we'll begin a one-week tour of Northern California. A very big tour is coming up, the Midwest tour, in the fall of 2016. People very much like that tour. We have a lot of students applying to the Midwest. And then, of course, for juniors, as Mrs. Gallant said, the trip to UCLA last week, for example, and Occidental, we have several of those to take advantage of. Our upcoming tour, which is the one I mentioned to Northern California, you'll see the kind of rotation that we have. We visit Cal Poly, UC Santa Cruz, and gosh, we enjoy some downtime in San Jose. Then Tuesday, Santa Clara or San Jose State, and then in the afternoon, Stanford. So fabulous schools that you get to see. USF or San Francisco State, St. Mary's or Berkeley on the next day, and then Thursday, UC Davis and UOP. So you get the smaller liberal arts, the big public, major, well-known research universities, the Catholic institutions up and down the coast. So a variety of really good schools just within Northern California. Sometimes when you think generically schools in California, you don't realize there are so many great schools in Northern California around our own area. And then if you go down by San Diego, problem if you go to school in San Diego, you never want to leave San Diego. So maybe you don't want to let your child go there. You'll never see them again. So tours, getting your feet on the ground, becoming familiar with different campuses, that is a great way to spend social time and learning time at any of the 3 years leading up to senior year.
Good morning, everyone. I'll wrap this all up. The last College and Coffee we have is actually based on summer. We kind of walked you through what to do kind of 9th, 10th, and 11th grade. This is just a recap. I think the most important piece of summer as your student is getting older, especially the junior parents, this is the last summer you're really going to have them as a high school student before they venture off. So make sure you get family time. That is absolutely very important. Any remediational classes need to be completed, of course. But in addition to that, it should be a functional time. Depending on where a student applies, the college will actually ask what they did the previous 1 or 2 summers, kind of depending on the school. The answer is sitting in the pool is not appropriate. Now, should they sit in the pool and relax? Absolutely. They should have that downtime. That's what summer is designed for, in part. But they should also use it as a functional 2 months to really advance, to explore, to figure out what their interests really are. Internships, research opportunities, volunteering, those are all great opportunities. Mrs. Cuneo does a great job of sending out summer opportunities as they come through. I hope all of you have received some of those. Most of them are through colleges and universities throughout the country. If you're not willing or ready yet to send a child to, say, Indiana, virtually any college in the area will have some sort of summer exploratory program that's a couple days or a couple weeks, just kind of depending on how they structure it. That's something you can definitely look into. Volunteering, if that's something your student is really interested in, push them towards volunteering. Maybe that then becomes their senior Magnificat project that they're so impassioned to do. Something that really gear them towards that. Summer programs, as I mentioned, and then even summer college courses. Pierce or Moore Park or College of the Canyons, whatever is local. They'll have a course or two that your student can take to get college credit, to show their competency at college level courses, and to again explore their interest a little bit deeper and a little bit further so that they can have that when they're applying for college in the fall of their senior year. So with regards to junior year specifically, our juniors are definitely the ones who are ramping up the most. That kind of gradual ramp really accelerates for the juniors, especially this time of the year. I think they start to see the end and realize the busyness that they're about to face and the quasi-chaos that is indicative of senior year. So especially for the juniors, summer can be a really vital, viable time for them to utilize effectively. And part of what we encourage students to do is work on their college applications, and not necessarily directly, but in a secondary or proximity way so that they can get some parts completed and prepared. We do want to emphasize, we don't want your juniors to stress over the summer about these, but the more little things they can do here and there, the more prepared they're going to be and the less stressful senior year will be. One of the things is starting college list. It's a tentative college list, right? We don't need anything rock solid or anything, but they should, at this point, seeing spring semester juniors have a pretty good idea, and they continue to expand on that in the summer. Maybe on a family trip they visit colleges like Brother Tom is mentioning, and then they can start to narrow it down a little bit or expand depending on the student. And then it should be a list created on academics and then admission standards. In other words, we want students to understand the concept of reach, target, and then the safety or probable schools, right? And I hope all of you have heard those terms. And as we work with them from sophomore year and up, we really talk about having a balanced list, right? We don't want a student to apply to 13 schools, and 12 of those schools are going to be very difficult for them to get in. That creates a lot of anxiety and a lot of frustration on your part, our part, and especially on the students' part. So as we go through, the bulk should really be in the target and or safety range, right? The reaches should really be reserved for 1 or 2 schools that they're really, really gung-ho about, but they just don't quite meet the standard or the typical admissions level. So reaches should really be reserved for that 1 or 2 special school that they're really that interested in. We want to make sure that they have the most options possible. And regardless of what our students say, a lot of our students will come in and say, well, I'm going to apply. I know I'm going to get denied, but you know what? It's my only chance to apply to this school, so I'm going to go for it. It doesn't matter going in what your expectations are. Getting a denial letter is still heartbreaking. It's still going to hurt a little bit, regardless of how prepared you are for it. So we want to make sure that our students are not setting themselves up for just a stream of denial letters. Every school on the list should be a school that a student is willing to go to. We don't want them to apply just because it's there, right? Now, I'm a fan of CSUN, but it tends to be that school where our students say, well, it's close to home, or my parents are making us do it. We want to make sure that they really are impassioned about every school that they're applying to, and that from the first school to the last school, they'd be willing and absolutely excited to go there. That's a main goal of ours. All-important essay. So, especially for those juniors, their grades are essentially pretty much set, right? The exception of first semester senior year. They've already done 6 semesters of work. Colleges are going to see those grades. Their SATs and their ACTs are for the most part completed, except for possibly a fall test or 2. So everything within the basic part of the application is done. The only exception is the essay, and that can be a very make or break aspect of what they're doing. And the key part of that is it should be their voice, right? An admissions rep can look at so many transcripts and they're going to see just a stream of A's, B's, and C's, and there's really nothing personal about a transcript. And that's by design, of course. It's to give a standardized way of looking at things. And that's where the essay comes in. That's where your students should be able to voice who they are, to let that admissions officer know, hey, this is me, and this is why I'm going to fit into your school community. And an effective, good essay will do that and will really voice that. Summer, for us, is a great time to have your students do and work on that. Now, we're certainly not asking them to have the perfect, ready essay, polished, set. You know, they just have to copy and paste and put it in there. That's not what we're asking. We're asking them to think about what is important to them. What would they like admissions officers to know about them? And then to start, come up with some ideas, maybe an outline or two, how they want to kind of navigate that so that they're more prepared come senior year when things really start to get busy. Part of what we're doing in the counseling office to prepare our juniors is we have what's called the Junior Workshop Series. So it's in the spring. In January and then early February, we actually had a workshop, and it's all during X-Block. It's 2:15 during X-Block. We advertise it in the CTW, and we send out reminders to students as well. The first set of workshops we had was creating your college list and choosing a major. So really, again, re-emphasizing that and encouraging them to explore those. Currently, we are in the senior timeline and then talking about letters of recommendation as well, getting them to think about who they might ask, how they might want to frame it, how they might want to have a college representative see their application. So who on campus may write a good letter for them. And then as well go over the timeline so that they understand kind of the expectations month by month of what's going to occur. We already had our first occurrence of this, which was February 16th. Our next one is actually tomorrow during X-Block, so it's 2:15 to roughly 3 o'clock. It'll be in the media center, so for those junior parents, if your son or daughter did not go, please encourage them to go tomorrow if they're able. And it's a loose kind of conversation we have. You know, if they can only go for 20 minutes, great, send them for 20 minutes. If they can go the whole time, that's great as well. Our last one is March 14th, and that's on essay writing tips. So we really go and we show them some great essays, some not so good essays, so that they can see the difference, see how they're formulated, see how they're written, so that they have a good idea of the process and what some of the outcomes potentially are, so that they can formulate and plan that as well. Again, they're held during X-Block in the Media Center, 2:15 to 3:15, depending on how we move through them. For juniors, we have a process, or what am I trying to say? A process, I guess, called Application Boot Camp. What this is an activity we do with our rising seniors just before school starts. The idea behind this is we work with the students to get as much of their applications done before school starts so that that stress level decreases substantially. We, the counselors, will work with students on the Common Application, on the UC application, answer questions about Cal States, and other applications as well. The idea behind it is to get as much of the application done ahead of time and with us, so that all of those kind of technical questions are answered ahead of time, they get it all done, and then they get into their senior year having a majority of their application filled out. In addition, we actually have English teachers who join us and work with students on their essays, formulating outlines, drafts, going over that. So by the end of the 2 or 3 day, depending on what session they sign up for, they should have a mostly completed Common App, a mostly completed UC application, and a lot of their other technical answers, or technical questions answered ahead of time. We will be posting and advertising the sign-up process for this. I've done this enough of years, and I think all the other counselors have. I don't know of a single senior I've worked with who said that it was a waste of their time, and all of them have said that it was such a useful piece of the end of their summer, start of their senior year, that they don't know how they would have gotten through the process without it. So if at all possible, I would really encourage the rising seniors to take a strong look at it and sign up. I think it's such a valuable process. Okay, so at this point we are done. I think we'll all come up here and then answer any questions you may have, and then we'll break out for individualized questions. Yeah.
My question is regarding the SATs and the ACTs. How many are they allowed to take before they actually decide on which score to submit to the colleges?
So that's a pretty individualized question, actually, and it depends on the school they're applying to. The general rule is at most 3 of one test. So if it's SAT or ACT, 3 at the most. Anything beyond that, they start to question the validity of the scoring because they're so used to the method of the test.
So how early can they take that test?
So as a department, we recommend spring of their junior year would be the first time they actually take the SAT and ACT.
And is it given again in the summer and in the fall?
It is given, the SAT is given in March, May, June, and then in the fall, and then a couple times in the fall, and then for the ACT, it's February, April, and June, and then again in the fall. So there's ample opportunity to do it. If they're not quite prepared, push them into the May, June section. But we do want, as Mrs. Cuneo said, we want them to take 1 of each in the spring of their junior year.
And remember, for 9th through 11th, they're taking practice tests in the fall. So they're getting exposure to the format, the timing, the questions, all of that, but they're just practicing. So then in the spring, if their junior year, they, after they've had all their classes and they're at that higher level, then they take the real thing. That's our thought behind that.
And the other thing, just so you all know, because we've done this for a long time, the scores peter out. So, after taking it a second time, usually there's not much more improvement, but the anxiety level is high if the kids think they need to take it 4 or 5 times. So just from a mental health standpoint as well, it's healthy to keep it at 2, no more than 3 attempts.
You were saying that's the validity if they take more than 3 times. Is that because the college sees all the scores?
Depending on how you send it, yes. Yeah.
Students have score choice, so they can send certain scores. But what we usually recommend for students across the board is just to send all their scores, because colleges will mix and match their scores, and you've probably heard super score maybe. The majority of schools out there will do super score, or they look at their scores to give them their best, and to look at them in their best light. So if they see that they're sending a score for 5 or 6 times, they're gonna kind of say, either it doesn't change much at all, or why did this student continue to take so many tests? So that's another part of that.
So you recommend even the first test to send to the college?
Well, again, it's a case-by-case basis, like if they had the flu, or they took it again and they did so much better, or there wasn't a big difference between the scores, then we can kind of advise them on that case-by-case. But, 9 times out of 10, we tell them just send all your scores. Yeah.
I have a question about being able to take the subject by subject for the SAT. Does that go across the board for every subject? You can take.
Good question. There's only some subjects, so but they cover most of the core academic subjects. Like there's literature, there's biology, there's physics, there's a high level of math, there's U.S. history, world history. So they cover a lot of subjects. There's even foreign language. So it just depends on the student, what AP class they're in or what subject they're interested in. But if you go to College Board's website, they give you all of the tests and all of a course description or a test description. So sometimes it's good for a student interested in them to go to that and look at that and look at the content and say, oh yeah, I am doing that right now, or I'm familiar with that. I feel like this would be a good test.
Question. What's a big difference between the new SAT and the old SAT?
The short answer is yes.
I think maybe one of the biggest differences are actually there's no penalty for guessing, whereas in the original SAT there was, and that's more like the ACT. So in my mind, the ACT and the new SAT are a little more similar than they used to be.
The old SAT was called a reasoning test, and so it was more a measure of how good a test taker the student was than their actual content knowledge. So the new SAT is much more like the ACT, as Mrs. Cuneo just said, where it is an aptitude test. It's gauging what the student has learned in high school. So that tends to be a better indication of a student's success at the college level than the old measure that the SAT was. And so that is why it is being redesigned. It's also more resistant to test prep, as is the ACT, which means you can't change your score as significantly as you used to be able to if you went to hours and hours and hours and weeks of test prep. Students can often increase their old SAT score, where now it's because it's what you know. That's a little bit more of a challenge to start, cramming new knowledge into your head and retaining that for the exam. So that's the main difference in a nutshell. Do you have a question?
Who actually reviews and goes over the applications themselves? Are they grad students? I mean, what can we do as parents to help our kids kind of do something to kind of kick that extra spark out there and really get the eye?
You mean in an admissions
In the
office?
admissions office, yeah.
They're admissions officers. Sometimes they are recent graduates. Sometimes they can be younger. I mean, what's the average admissions age? Is like 28 or something. They tend to be younger, and those people go on to other things. So they are younger, but they're well trained, obviously.
We should probably encourage our students to write something more towards that age group, correct? To kind of
No,
get
we're
the eye.
encouraging our students to write what is authentic to them and is their voice. So we have some students that sound like they're 35 years old and some students that sound like they're 14 years old, but it's supposed to be the voice of the student.
Okay, one other question. You guys help us as parents, give us a list, what's the best bang for the buck out there? I mean, you guys recommend any schools? I mean, do you help recommend schools?
Oh, sure.
How do you do that? That's a big part of it.
Yeah, that's going to be a very individualized process. That's why your child has an individual counselor. It's going to vary from student to student, location, programs, their GPA, their test scores. For one student might be a good bang for their buck because they might get merit-based aid, but another student who doesn't have the same academics number may not. So that is part of what we suggest.
And one thing you guys can do with your kids, 10th, 11th grade especially, is start having conversations at home about, what's a student's criteria. And I'm sure you all have your opinions of where you want your child to go, where you think they should go. But, essentially we really, in our department, really want to empower the students to think about it's their journey. They need to be invested in it, or else you're going to be reminding them every day to do something. They're not going to be doing their applications. They're going to be slacking. They're going to miss a deadline, blah, blah, blah. So they have to own the process a little bit. And so in 10th and 11th grade, we start having them think, we have them use Naviance. Anyone heard about Naviance in here? Family Connection? Yes? Okay. So we encourage them to play around with that. Think about criteria as simple as it might be. It kind of helps them break down, 4,000 options to a smaller number, because by senior year, we want them to have about 10 schools. So it's very overwhelming for them to think, how am I going to get from 4,000 to 10 schools? So you start thinking, location. How far does my child want to go? Do they want a big school? Do they want a small school? Have they been on campuses like our college tours? That gives them good experience to say, this is what I like, this is what I prefer. Do they really love the sciences? Do they really love math? Do they want to do research? That helps us, when we're talking with them, figure out, okay, maybe these are some schools we can suggest. Or if you sit down with your child and say, look, times are tough. You're not going to be able to go to a private school for college. Or, look, times are tough. You're going to need to go to a Cal State, and then for graduate school, you can go somewhere else. Those help us determine what kind of suggestions can we give your family and your student because there are so many options, you know. And then of course, then it comes down to what makes sense academically, what's your reach school, your target school, your safety school. It's so individualized. So we do want to start early, just having them think, where would I want to be? You know, and sometimes it seems silly to say, you know, do you want to be in the snow or do you not want to be in the snow? But that's a legitimate question, you know, because the kids don't think about that sometimes until it's senior year, and they're like, whoa, I don't want to go that far away. And what was I thinking? So you can try to combat a little bit of that by starting these conversations at home to say, you know, what kind of kid are you? What kind of thing do you want? You know, what kind of environment do you want? And take them around to look at things and you just get their scope a little bit, you know, wider.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, as you know, we all as a village help the students create their college list. I think it's important for you as parents to, you know, and I'm a parent, so I admit I make this mistake. Sometimes we really feel like we know what's best for our kid, and we try to kind of sway them, and then they're not going to own the process. You know, really listen to your students when they say what they want. And then I heard great advice on a conference that Brother Tom and I went to a couple years ago. There was a college counselor at a very selective high school in the East Coast, and the parents were asking him all the time, what can we do, what can we do? And he said, go on your child's list, find out something wonderful about every school on the list, so that when they get the acceptance to that school, you can celebrate with them instead of saying, well, that's good, but what about this one? Because they really still want to please you, believe it or not, but this is their 4 years, this is their college. And, you know, I had a student last year whose number one choice was Occidental, and after she visited it and she was in love with it, and I said, what do you love about it? And she loved the size and the class size and the political science, but she goes, I'm kind of embarrassed to tell you, I also love that they have vegan choices in their cafeteria, and food is number 3 in the nation, and you know, that's really important to me, and I feel silly saying that, and I was like, why? Like, this is going to be your home. And we happened to run into her accidentally last week, and she is over the moon with her choice. She is absolutely so excited about being at Occidental. So, you know, really kind of like watch your children blossom through this process and encourage them, no matter how silly their reasoning might be, because they need to find that home.
I just had a question about the SAT process, because I actually sat with my son while he filled out the 50-page thing that they give you. So he's registered for the March one. They ask you this question at the end, like, what colleges do you want to send it to? Because I guess you get like 4 or something free. And they kept sending me emails because I CC'd myself on all these emails. And so, do we have to put that in right away, or okay? So when do we have to decide?
So, Brother Tom actually just put that in my ear that we, at Chaminade, we do not send any test scores. We just simply send transcripts. It's actually the families or the student's responsibility to send test scores directly to those schools. So during the college application process, right about the time you're hitting the submit button, you should be going on to College Board or ACT student and sending these scores directly to those schools. You log on, you pay the fee per school, and then you send it to them that way.
Okay, so we lose out on the free, right? Because I
You
think
do,
they expire
yes.
after 30
Yeah.
days.
If you take it again in the fall,
Uh-huh.
then you could get the freebies. You're still paying for them because
Yeah.
you just paid for your registration
But
fee.
will it cover, because you said we can send all previous scores also?
Correct,
Okay,
yes.
good.
For the SAT,
Yeah, but not for the act.
correct.
Okay.
What is the process for applying for scholarships?
For scholarships? Well, it's a variety of things. We have a list on Naviance that we keep as an office, so students can always go on there and look up different things that we have gotten, you know, as an office, check out the deadlines, the amounts. It's usually like essays or quick forms to fill out, things like that. I would say that's probably one of the most underutilized resources that students have. Or that students use. And then within Naviance, under scholarships, there's actually a national database that students can plug in their information through Sally Mae, and it will help them locate scholarships that they can look for. Additionally, starting in junior year, we really start to remind students to look around their lives. Look at their parents' place of employment. We have a lot of students that bring in forms from, you know, their parents' law firms, from Baxter, from Coca-Cola, from wherever their parents work, and there might be opportunities within those for them to apply to. Churches, local community organizations, different things like that. So it takes a little bit of looking, to be quite honest. I have one senior right now who literally every 2 weeks she's bringing me a new scholarship form, and I said, "This is so awesome. Where are you finding these?" She goes, "From the Naviance list." So I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's so great." And that's one senior though, one senior. So it's very, it does take a little looking and a little doing, but it's out there. So what you guys can do is just remind your students to be proactive, and then, look around your lives and see if there's an opportunity there that they could, apply for.
Two things. One, on that subject, I went to one of the college and coffees many, many years ago, and they had a list of all of the scholarships, and some expire at the end of their sophomore year, some expire at the end of the junior year. So, go to the first one next year, and whatever year you're in, start looking at maybe at $2,000, it might be $500 or whatever it is, but there's a lot of them available, and sometimes it's just a matter of writing an essay. The other thing that I had a question on was, I know my wife and son went to this, I think, senior year, where the parents and the students went to a workshop where they read applications, real applications, and they played the role of admissions counselors and selected who they would pick for the school, and a lot of time, and then they would find out whether they actually got accepted or not. And it was a fascinating exercise because they got to read a lot of different essays, and they thought there were some real winners, and they didn't get accepted, and some kids who had really personal applications did. So I thought it was a great exercise, and
Thank you.
I don't know when
Thank
you do
you
that.
for
or-
reminding us about that.
We've switched that. Okay, so we do that with all the Valley Counselor schools, so the Valley schools, so Presby, Louisville, Lorena, Notre Dame, Providence. I probably forgot somebody. We do it together. It's called Case Studies. It's an excellent opportunity. Thank you for bringing that up. We used to do it in the fall. This year we switched it back to the spring. It's for juniors only, so junior parents, write this down, April 11th. In the next probably month-ish, we'll be selling tickets. Louisville, it's going to be at Louisville this year, so they're still trying to figure out how many bodies they can have on campus and still make it effective. But they already have over 20 college admissions reps. So it's actual college admissions reps from real colleges who come and sit down with families and talk about real cases. It's all new cases, so for those of you who have been in the last couple of years, they've been reusing them, but this year they're all new cases as well. So really great opportunity. Thank you for bringing that up. April 11th, juniors only, but we do it every year. Yes.
So I have a question. My child is a junior. And last year we got a lot of solicitations, and this year we're getting more. I just don't know what's good and what's trash. So whatever you can tell me,
Please. Well, I mean, again, that there's no answer to that. There are going to be some. So when the children start taking the PSAT is when the flood will start. So generally what we say is if it's a program that the student is interested in and you want to check to see if it's reputable, you're more than welcome to run it by us. By and large, most of them are. Be aware that that is not the thing that is going to get your child into college, though. So sometimes it'll come from Boston University, and that's the child's first choice, and the parent's like, I'm going to send them to that one. That is not going to get them into that school any more than it's going to get them into any other school. It's another opportunity to make their summer productive or their spring break, whenever that conference or workshop is. So if they're interested in it, some of them are very pricey. So you have to decide as a family if that's something that you are willing to do. Some of them are very reasonable. Some of them are local, which makes them cheaper. So as you're sifting through, if your child finds something, we have kids come in all the time and they're like, oh, I got this from so-and-so. Sometimes they have paper, sometimes it's email. Just have them stop by. Anyone in the office can just give them, yeah, that's great. We've had students do that. Sometimes they tell you that you're nominated or you're representing. They use very purposeful language, right? It's to get your attention. And not that your children aren't fabulous and unique and special, but they're sending that to everybody. So, so just be mindful of that as well. Again, they're all great programs, But just with that information in mind, make your decisions.
And same thing with like college
Yeah.
mail. You know, I'm sure
Yes.
that's probably what you are all getting as well. So, and it's great. I mean, but you know, remember, colleges are businesses. So they spend a lot of money on those flashy brochures and on their websites to, you know, make you excited and get your kids interested, which is great. So take advantage of it as an opportunity to learn something, read it, and throw it in the recycle if it doesn't really match up, or your kid's not into it, or you're just getting too many. You know, and then keep it if it's something that you want to look at again later. But it's really just for informational purposes. And like Mrs. Cowgill said, they're probably sending it to a lot of students. So just take it for what it's worth as an opportunity to learn about the school.
When you're looking at colleges, how do you know if they require a subject test with the SAT? Where do you look at, where do you find that information?
On their admissions page.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the easiest thing to go to that college's admissions page. They will give you curriculum requirements, years of science, years of English, etc., as well as what their testing requirements are.
It's mostly the most selective schools that still require them,
The subject
strongly
test.
recommend them, the subject test. Everyone, almost every school still requires the ACT and SAT, but we're talking specifically about the subject test. It's mainly the most selective schools in the nation that require or strongly recommend them, just so you know.
So every time your child does take an AP class, they should take the subject test in?
Not necessarily.
They're strong in that
Yeah,
area.
they're strong in that area and they enjoyed the class and they did really well, then that could be something that they focus on. But especially because for the most part it's just optional. You know, I mean, we are not of the mindset to do more testing than you need. So if your student really is really strong in math and science and they're taking a few APs, then sure, go for it. But again, case by case, you can kind of evaluate that scenario. You know, not to overdo it, but to have an experience with that would be totally fine.
Before you move on, the subject test you're talking about, that's not the AP test that they have to take.
Correct.
Correct, it is not.
It's an
Right.
additional
There's
test.
so much testing.
Right, so
for
the
these
AP
courses.
test is a test they take at the end of the class.
Yes.
So it's at the end of the year
Yes.
in which they're taking it. Now, to add to the confusion, there are May and June subject tests, but those are given off-site on a Saturday, let's say at El Camino if you live locally. So that's a different thing. It's great timing to take it in that time. I know sometimes kids look at me and I'm like, you should take it in May, and they're like, what? Because it's like, it's the Saturday between the 2 weeks of AP testing. But I'm like, you know more now than you're going to know about the subject until you take another class in that. So subject tests are about an hour and 10 minutes. So they're not a half-day festivity, you know, like the regular testing where they get out at, 1. So it's a little bit more tolerable. So those are separate tests.
And they can take up to 3 subjects in a sitting,
But that's a lot.
but that's
too.
a lot.
Yeah.
If they take the subject test and they don't do well, can they not send that result?
There's
Do they
score
have to?
choice, but there's also colleges who say we want to see all of your testing, and ethically we encourage then those students to send all of their testing. What colleges promise us and have promised us for as long as we've all done this and even longer is they're not going to hurt a child by a low score. They're looking for the child's best test, their best score. Yeah.
Thank you for this, by the way, but one quick question. As far as if your child already took the old SATs, it sounds like they should just take the ACT because it's very similar to the comprehensive style of the new SAT.
That's a good question.
Again, without actually taking the real deal, without taking the actual real new SAT, you're just making an educated guess on, how the child is going to achieve. So you want to start them with the ACT, that's fine, but I think everyone's recommendation is always still going to be that all the juniors should be taking one of the new SAT and an ACT.
Okay.
Unless they, I talked to a parent the other day. Their child took the old SAT, thankfully did amazingly well, and that child is done.
So, yeah, because I told him he did pretty well on the SAT, that the ACT, I said, you can take that if you want to or not. But
Sure.
if it's comprehensive, maybe he should, because that was, in the beginning of this year.
Yeah, and the SAT and ACT are still different. They have different subject, like there's no
There's a-
science
yeah.
reasoning in the new SAT and there is in the ACT. Again, we walk the line in our office. We see a lot of kids who are really, really stressed out, to be honest with you. And so we try not to encourage over testing, but at the same time, we've also been encouraging our juniors to kind of wait for the new SAT. So if they've taken the old SAT and want to try the new SAT, then I would say maybe that's a good idea, at least one sitting in case that just they do really well. What you can do as parents is take a look at how your child did on the PSAT, because that was based on the new SAT. So if you're a junior or sophomore parent sitting in here and your child did pretty well on the PSAT, then that's a good indication that they should probably try the new SAT.
What does the ACT, how does that differ from the old SAT?
The science reasoning, the percentages are different, there's the math.
Yeah.
Goes a little higher in math.
There's 4 sections of the there's 4 sections of the ACT, and then there were 3 sections on the old SAT.
Okay, so there's 4 sections on
I
the
feel like we're
ACT.
using a lot of initials right now.
I
Right?
know.
It's like kind of like a
I know,
robot.
it gets a
Is there a
lot.
certain type of student that does better on the ACT?
No, so again, these are very individualized, specific questions that
For the
will,
family.
will only be best served by your child coming in, asking the questions, and coming up with a plan. That's why we don't just send out a sheet saying this is what we recommend. What we recommend for each student is going to be different based on their lists and based on their stress level, based on, a lot of things. And last question in the back.
The new SAT, will that still be out 2,400? Because I know when they did the PSAT, we did it at 15.
Yeah, that was an odd decision that they did it out of 1520, but it's going to be out of 1600.
The new SAT.
Going back to the
Just
back
like when a lot of us were taking
the
it.
flashback to
And the ACT will remain out of 34?
36.
36.
Yeah,
At
until
this
they
point.
change.
Yeah.
But for now, yes. So we want to be conscientious of all of your time. We said 8 to 9, so we're going to go ahead and end here. But all of us are still here if you have any questions. The other thing, really quick, I want to